Was he human? And why did those footprints end right where the horror began? Was the diary a warning? And what's hiding in the walls, begging to be let out? Was the boy a ghost, or had the storm itself learned to wear a human face?
The storm had been building all day, a slow, ominous gathering of clouds that turned the sky into a swirling mass of gray and green. By evening, it had arrived with a fury that seemed almost personal. The wind howled like a wounded beast, rattling the windows and bending the trees until they groaned in protest. Rain lashed against the house in relentless waves, and the occasional crack of thunder shook the ground like the footsteps of some colossal, unseen creature. Inside the Thompson house, the air was thick with tension. The power had gone out hours ago, plunging the home into darkness, except for the flickering glow of a single battery-powered lantern. Karen Thompson sat on the couch, her hands wrapped tightly around a mug of tea that had long gone cold. Her husband, John, was in the basement, trying to get the generator working, while their 8-year-old son, Timmy, sat cross-legged on the floor, staring out the living room window. "Timmy, come away from the window," Karen said, her voice sharper than she intended. She didn't like the way the storm made her feel, like something was watching them, waiting for the right moment to strike. "But Mom, I think I saw something," Timmy said, his voice barely above a whisper. He didn't turn around, his eyes fixed on the darkness outside. Karen's stomach tightened. She didn't like the way he said it, like he wasn't sure if he wanted to be believed. "It's just the storm," she said, forcing a smile. "Your imagination's running wild." But Timmy didn't move. Another bolt of lightning split the sky, illuminating the yard in a brief, blinding flash. And in that moment, Timmy saw it. A man standing at the edge of the yard. He was drenched, his clothes clinging to his thin frame, and his face. Timmy couldn't look away. The man's eyes were black, like two voids, and they seemed to stare right through him. "Mom!" Timmy screamed, scrambling backward. Karen was on her feet in an instant, her heart pounding. "What? What is it?" "There's a man outside," Timmy cried, pointing at the window. Karen's blood ran cold. She grabbed Timmy and pulled him close, her eyes fixed on the window. The rain streaked down the glass, distorting the view, but she could see the outline of the yard, the trees swaying violently in the wind. Another flash of lightning, and there he was, closer now, just a few feet from the window. His face was pale, almost glowing, and his black eyes seemed to pierce through the darkness. "John!" Karen screamed, her voice cracking. "John, get in here!" John Thompson came running, his face pale and drawn. He'd been in the basement, trying to get the generator working, and the look on his wife's face stopped him dead in his tracks. "What's wrong?" he demanded. "There's someone outside," Karen said, her voice trembling. "A man. He's just standing there staring at us." John grabbed the fireplace poker and strode to the window, his jaw clenched. The lightning flashed again, and the yard was empty. Just rain and wind and darkness. "There's no one there," John said, though his voice lacked conviction. He turned to Karen, his face grim. "It's just the storm. You're both spooked, that's all." But Karen knew what she had seen, and so did Timmy. The hours dragged on, the storm showing no signs of letting up. The family stayed in the living room, huddled together under a blanket, their eyes darting to the window every time the lightning flashed. And then it happened again. This time, the man was right outside the window, his face pressed against the glass. His black eyes were wide, unblinking, and his mouth was twisted into a grotesque smile. Karen screamed, and John raised the fireplace poker, his hands shaking. "Get away from here!" John shouted, though the man couldn't possibly hear him over the storm. The lightning flashed once more, and the man was gone. Karen called the police, her hands trembling so badly she could barely dial the number. The dispatcher promised to send someone, but it would take time. The storm had knocked out power all over town, and the roads were flooded. When the police finally arrived, they found nothing. No footprints, no signs of forced entry, Nothing. But as they turned to leave, one of the officers paused, his flashlight beam catching something in the mud outside the window. "What's that?" he asked, bending down. There, in the soft earth, were footprints. They led from the edge of the yard straight to the window. And then they stopped, as if whoever had made them had simply vanished into thin air. The Thompsons moved out the next week. They never talked about what they had seen that night, but Timmy would always remember the man's eyes, black and endless, staring at him through the storm. And sometimes, on nights when the thunder rolled and the lightning split the sky, he would swear he saw him again, standing at the edge of the yard, waiting.
The rain had been falling for 3 days straight when the real storm arrived. It wasn't the gentle patter that lulled Emily to sleep but a snarling, thrashing thing that clawed at the farmhouse like it wanted in. Her bedroom window rattled in its frame, and the old oak outside lashed its branches against the roof, casting skeletal shadows on the walls. Emily lay frozen under her quilt, her heartbeat thudding in time with the thunder. Then she heard it. Not the storm, beneath it. A child's sob, high and thin, woven into the thunderclap itself. It lasted only a second, but it froze her blood. "Hello," she whispered, her voice swallowed by the next roll of thunder. Lightning flashed, bleaching the room blue-white. In that split second, she saw her closet door, slightly ajar, sway inward, as if someone had brushed past it. No. The wind. Just the wind. But when the thunder came again, so did the cry. Closer now. Hungrier. Emily fumbled for her phone, her fingers slick with sweat. The screen glared 2:14 a.m. She thumbed the flashlight on and swung her legs over the bed. The floorboards groaned under her weight, louder than they'd ever been in daylight. The sobbing stopped. Is someone there? Her voice trembled. Silence. Then. The thunder shook the house, and with it came a wail so raw it pierced her skull. Emily stumbled backward, phone clattering to the floor. The flashlight beam skittered across the room, catching the edge of her closet door. Something moved inside. She didn't scream. Couldn't. Her lungs locked as the closet door creaked open another inch. The smell hit her first, damp rot, like wet soil and spoiled milk. Then she saw it, a shadow, small and hunched, curled in the back corner. "Please," it whimpered, a girl's voice, broken and ancient. Emily's knees gave out. She scrambled backward, her palms scraping against splintered wood, until her spine hit the bed frame. The shadow twitched. Lightning struck somewhere close, the yard, the oak tree, she couldn't tell, and the room blazed white. The shadow was gone. By dawn, the storm had retreated, leaving the farmhouse dripping and shivering. Emily's parents found her on the floor, knees hugged to her chest, staring at the closet. "Nightmare," her dad said, chewing his toast like he was discussing the weather. "Happens when you watch those creepy videos before bed." Her mom ruffled Emily's hair. "House makes noises. Always has." But Emily waited until they left for work. Until the sun climbed high, mocking her fear. Then she tore the closet apart. She found the diary under a loose floorboard, wrapped in a moth-eaten shawl. The cover was bloated with moisture, the pages fused together like flesh. Emily peeled them apart, her breath catching. The entries were frantic, scribbled in jagged cursive. June 12, 1972, it comes with the rain. It's not a ghost. It's worse. June 15, 1972, I hear it in the walls. It's learning my name. Final entry, smeared in rust-red ink, don't leave me inside. The last word was underlined 3 times, the paper torn where the pen had dug in. Emily's hands shook. Outside, the sky darkened again. Thunder growled, low and promising. Somewhere in the house, a floorboard creaked. The diary's pages clung to Emily's fingers like damp skin. Lila's diary. The name echoed in her head as she hunched over the brittle pages at her desk, the afternoon sun bleeding weakly through grimy farmhouse windows. Outside, the sky hung low and bruised, threatening another storm. July 7, 1972, it's not just thunder anymore. It talks. It sounds like me, but wrong, like a broken record of my voice. It says it wants to play. I don't want to play. July 12, 1972, found scratches inside the closet walls. Not mice. Too big. Too deep. Dad says it's the pipes. Liar. Emily's throat tightened. She flipped to the last entry, the paper crackling like old bones. August 1, 1972, it's in the walls. It wants out. I can't sleep. I can't. The sentence ended mid-word, the page torn. Emily traced the jagged edge with her thumb, her pulse quickening. A cold draft snaked through the room, though the windows were shut. That night, the storm returned. Emily lay rigid in bed, clutching Lila's diary to her chest. The first thunderclap shook the house, and the voice came, not a sob this time, but a whisper, slithering out of the dark. Help me, let me out. It came from the closet. Emily's breath fogged in the suddenly frigid air. She flicked on her flashlight, the beam trembling as it swept over the closet door. Something glinted in the wood, fresh scratches, deep and parallel, like claws had raked the inside. Thud. She jumped. A porcelain figurine, a childhood birthday gift, had toppled off her dresser. It lay shattered on the floor, its painted smile cracked in two. Mom! Emily screamed, racing downstairs. Her parents sat at the kitchen table, her father's grease-stained hands dismantling a carburetor, her mother knitting a scarf that pooled like blood in her lap. It's happening again. Emily slammed the diary down. The voice, the scratches, look at this. Her father didn't glance up. House is old, kiddo. Settles in the rain. But Lila, the girl who lived here, she wrote about the same thing. Her mother sighed. Emily, this is why you shouldn't read trash you find in walls. Crack. Lightning flashed. The kitchen bulb buzzed, dimmed, and died. In the sudden dark, Emily heard it, a wet, gurgling laugh, right behind her. Emily. She whirled. Nothing. When the lights flickered on, her parents stared at her, their faces pale. Did you hear that? Emily whispered. Her father stood, his chair screeching. Enough. Go to bed. Upstairs, Emily found her window smeared with muddy handprints, small, child-sized, on the inside. The voice giggled, this time from the walls themselves. You'll let me out, Emily. You're nicer than Lila. She backed away, her legs hitting the bed. The diary lay open on her pillow, though she'd left it on the desk. A new sentence glistened on the torn page, written in something thick and dark. Don't sleep. Outside, thunder growled. The storm wasn't done. The storm hit at midnight, a howling beast of wind and rain that tore shingles from the roof and sent the old oak tree crashing through the kitchen window. Emily stood in her bedroom, Lila's diary clutched in one hand, a claw hammer in the other. The voice had been screaming for hours, shredding her nerves. Let me out, let me out, let me out. It wasn't in the walls anymore. It was everywhere. Emily swung the hammer at the closet's back panel. The rotted wood splintered easily, revealing a gaping black maw that stank of decay and wet earth. Her flashlight trembled as she aimed it inside. There, in the crawl space, lay a small skeleton curled fetal beneath a moldering quilt. Clutched in its bony fingers was a doll, once blonde, now bald and sprouting fungus, its button eyes replaced with jagged shards of glass. The voice rose to a shriek. You found me. The farmhouse groaned. Plaster rained from the ceiling as the floor buckled. Emily gagged on the stench, her eyes watering. The doll's head creaked toward her, glass eyes glinting. Now let me out. Lightning struck. The blast threw Emily backward, her ears ringing. Smoke curled from the closet, then flames, hungry, crackling tendrils licking up the walls. The fire spread unnaturally fast, as if fueled by something older than wood. Mom! Dad! Emily screamed, scrambling downstairs. The living room was a nightmare of smoke and sparks. Her parents lay motionless on the floor, their faces eerily calm, their eyes wide and black as the thing in the walls. No. No, no, no. A beam crashed down, embers stinging her skin. Emily stumbled out the front door, choking on ash and rain. Behind her, the farmhouse roared like a living thing, flames clawing at the sky. In the driveway, she turned. The fire silhouetted a small figure in her bedroom window. It waved, its glass-eyed doll dangling from one hand. Then it threw back its head and laughed, a sound like breaking bones and rolling thunder. Emily ran. The apartment in Portland was small, bright, and blessedly silent. No creaks. No whispers. Emily sat cross-legged on her futon, scrolling through job listings, when the first rumble of thunder shook the windows. Her coffee mug trembled. No. Not here. Not again. Rain sheeted down the glass. Emily approached the window slowly, her reflection pale and gaunt. The storm flashed, and for a heartbeat, she saw it, a smudge of mud on the outside pane, shaped like a child's hand. "Missed you," giggled the voice, right behind her ear. Emily spun. The room was empty. But on the floor, glistening wetly, was a single footprint. Small. Barefoot. Leading to her closet. The storm didn't just arrive, it unfolded. One moment, Vikram was winding through the Himalayan foothills, the road a dusty ribbon under a leaden sky. The next, the clouds split, vomiting rain so thick it turned the world into a smudged watercolor. His wipers screamed in protest, and the car's headlights barely pierced the gray veil ahead. Vikram cursed, knuckles white on the wheel. He'd laughed when the villagers warned him. Monsoon ghosts, they'd whispered. They take the curious. But Vikram Sharma, investigative journalist and professional skeptic, didn't believe in ghosts. He believed in corruption, in missing funds, in the 37 disappearances the government had buried under labels like landslide and animal attack. Then the road vanished. Not metaphorically, the asphalt lurched, swallowed by a river of mud. Vikram slammed the brakes, but the car fishtailed, tires shrieking, and came to rest nose first in a ditch. The engine died with a wet gurgle. "Perfect," he muttered, grabbing his bag. The dharamshala emerged from the gloom like a rotting tooth. Its wooden sign, "Shelter for the Blessed," hung askew, creaking in the wind. Vikram shouldered the door open, and a stench hit him, mildew, ancient incense, and something meatier, like wet fur. A single oil lamp flickered, revealing the caretaker. The old man sat cross-legged in the corner, his skin the color of ash, milky eyes fixed on nothing. A rusted iron key hung around his neck. "Lock the door," he rasped, voice like dry leaves. "No matter what knocks. No matter what sounds like it knocks." Vikram snorted. "Thanks for the tip, Baba." But as night deepened, the dharamshala breathed. Floorboards groaned like arthritic joints. Wind whistled through cracks in the walls, carrying voices, fragments of nursery rhymes, laughter that ended in wet coughs. Vikram found himself at a moth-eaten desk, sifting through yellowed newspapers. July 12, 1987, local boy vanishes during storm. Arjun Patel, 9, last seen near Dharamshala. August 3, 1995, trekking group disappears. Search called off due to hazardous weather. A child's drawing fluttered out, a stick figure family standing under a smiling sun, scribbled over in red crayon, they lie. Thunder boomed, closer now. The lamp guttered. Knock. 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 Vikram froze. The sound came from the front door, polite, human. Hello, he called, hating the tremor in his voice. No answer. Just the storm's howl. Knock. 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 He approached the door, I pressed to a splintered knot in the wood. A boy stood outside, no older than 10, soaked to the bone. His school uniform clung to skeletal limbs, and his smile stretched too wide, too many teeth glinting in the dark. Let me in, uncle, he said, tilting his head. I'm so cold. Vikram's hand hovered over the latch. The sadhu's warning slithered into his mind. Lightning flashed. The boy's eyes were pure black, reflecting nothing. Vikram stumbled back. The door shook, rattling on its hinges. Arjun wants to play. The voice came from everywhere, the walls, the floor, the rotting rafters. The oil lamp died, plunging the room into darkness. When the lightning came again, the boy was gone. But the door stood open. And the storm stepped inside. The laughter started at midnight. It wasn't the storm, though the wind screamed like a gutted animal, but something inside the dharamshala. High-pitched, giddy, skittering down the halls like a spider on glass. Vikram pressed his ear to the door of his room, the wood cold and damp under his palm. Arjun wants to play hide-and-seek, uncle. The voice came from inches away, as if the boy's lips were pressed to the other side of the door. Vikram jerked back, heart slamming against his ribs. Who's there? He barked, hating the fear in his voice. Silence. Then a giggle, muffled and wet, fading down the corridor. The sadhu was gone. Vikram had searched the dharamshala after finding the journal, but the old man's rocking chair sat empty, a rusted key and a leather-bound book left behind like macabre gifts. The journal's pages were filled with feverish scrawl. It wears their faces. Learns their voices. The storm feeds it, and it feeds the storm. Do not open the door. Do not open the door. Do not. The entry ended in a jagged tear. Now, as Vikram paced his room, a cramped cell with a cot thinner than a corpse, the laughter returned. Closer. Knock. 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 3 raps, crisp and polite. Vikram froze. The sound came from his door, but the voice came from inside the room. Let me in, uncle. I'm so cold. He turned slowly. The boy stood by the window, backlit by lightning. Water pooled at his bare feet, black and viscous, reeking of stagnant ponds and rotting meat. His uniform hung in tatters, revealing grayish skin mottled with bruises that looked decades old. But his smile. God, his smile stretched ear to ear, teeth sharp and crowded like a piranha's. You'll catch your death out there, Vikram said, the joke sour on his tongue. His hand inched toward the sadhu's key, heavy in his pocket. The boy tilted his head, neck creaking. I'm already dead, uncle. Aren't you? Lightning flashed. For a heartbeat, the boy's eyes became voids, reflecting nothing but the storm's fury. Then he was at the door, small hand slamming against the wood. Knock. 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 Vikram's breath fogged in the suddenly arctic air. His fingers brushed the key. Don't. Don't. Let me in. The door exploded inward. The boy stood on the threshold, head lolling, mouth unhinged. Black water surged around him, flooding the room, soaking Vikram's shoes. It burned like dry ice. Tag, the boy whispered. You're it. He stepped inside. Lightning struck, a deafening crack, and the boy vanished. The door hung open, rain gusting in. The black water receded, leaving behind footprints. Small, bare, and wrong, the toes too long, the arches twisted. They trailed down the hall, ending at a basement door Vikram hadn't noticed before. Padlocked. The Sadhu's key fit perfectly. The basement door creaked open, exhaling a breath of rot and damp earth. Vikram's flashlight trembled in his grip, the beam slicing through cobwebs thick as burial shrouds. The walls were papered with faces, dozens of photographs nailed haphazardly, their edges curled, their eyes scratched out. Missing. 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 At the room's heart sat a skeleton. Small, brittle, curled like a question mark. Its bony fingers clutched a rusted toy truck, the wheels fused with rust. Vikram's throat tightened. Arjun. You found my friends, giggled the boy. Vikram spun. The child stood in the doorway, but he wasn't a child anymore. His limbs stretched grotesquely, joints popping, skin splitting to reveal glistening black sinew. His eyes were gone, replaced by swirling storm clouds. You'll stay with us now, the thing said, its voice a chorus of whispers, men, women, children, all swallowed by the storm. The dharamshala shuddered. Plaster rained down as the roof peeled away, devoured by the tempest. Wind screamed through the gaps, carrying voices Vikram recognized, the missing, the vanished, the taken. He ran. The hallway stretched, walls bleeding black mold. Floorboards warped underfoot, snapping like bones. Behind him, the boy's laughter echoed, closer with every step. Tag, uncle. You're still it. Vikram burst into the storm, rain needling his skin. The road, his road, the one he'd driven a lifetime ago, was gone. In its place yawned a chasm, the mountainside sheared clean. Lightning flashed, etching the boy's silhouette atop the cliff. He waved, his arm elongating, fingers branching into talons. Join us, the storm roared. Vikram stumbled backward as the ground crumbled beneath him. The dharamshala collapsed inward, a dying beast, its timbers splintering. The boy leaped, his form unraveling into a vortex of wind and debris. You're ours now. The storm swallowed Vikram whole. Years later. The hikers claimed they heard screams during the monsoon, a man's voice, raw and endless, woven into the thunder. Locals avoided the ruins, but teenagers dared each other to approach the cliff at night. They returned pale, babbling about a shadow that knocked on their tents, whispering, "Let me in," with a voice like grinding stones. The government labeled it mass hysteria. But on nights when the storms rage hardest, drivers on the Himalayan highway swear they see a figure in the rearview mirror, drenched, hollow-eyed, mouth stretched in a silent scream. They lock their doors. They never stop.